All right, well, welcome to episode 7 of the Property Strategy Podcast. Today we're talking everything money management. Now, I think there's kind of different stages that you go through with money management, especially when you're kind of younger and first starting out. Maybe we're kind of capped on income and or our earning ability, going through those early stages of our career.
We've been there.
Yeah, 100%. I think every kind of dollar and cent kind of matters, and so you want to make sure that you're tracking everything, and particularly if you're saving for a deposit to get into your first property. But there's some strategies and some things that we can do along the way while we're building out our portfolio, where we're refinancing our portfolio, when we might be going for purchase number 2 or 3, or even when we're like exiting out of the portfolio. Money management should always be considered. But for someone who's potentially in that basket of saving for their first deposit, Joey, I mean, how was it for you?
Mate, I mean, I was just a really kind of a hard saver by nature. I'm living at home, if that's possible, with parents for as long as you possibly could. That was huge, particularly with kind of rents being quite high. So,
and it's not shameful, is it?
Like, no, man, I don't
live
care.
With my parents.
Yeah, I don't care. I lived at my parents' place with my wife. Like we were just married. I mean, like we had a home that we were in the process of going through renovations and whatnot. But and I think it's becoming more and more common now as well. I think people went through this phase kind of like COVID, or maybe pre-COVID, they might have been renting, and then during COVID, let's go and save a buck, move back in with mum and dad, and then maybe moved out for a period, and then gone, oh, actually, we need money for a deposit, let's move back in home. And some people don't have the luxury as well. I was very fortunate that I did, and it was rent-free, thanks, Dad. So that was one really big way, because I mean, like you talk about it, it's wherever, depending on where you are, it could be $600, $700, $800, maybe even more a week. Yeah, if you're renting.
Generally, it could be like 20, 30, 40% of your income, right? They're contributing towards
going
rent.
Towards that. So that's one really kind of key thing as well. And you don't need to be a neurosurgeon to figure out that earn more dollars. So obviously, as pay increases kind of happen, a little bit of career progression, that always helps. And people kind of get a little bit narrow-minded in that, I'm earning my $75,000 a year and that's all I'll ever earn. When, I mean, the reality is you'll probably out-earn and outstrip just kind of CPI, because just career progression. So that's a really, really common one. And there was the emergence of the whole side hustle, kind of whatever you could do to kind of earn extra bucks. So, I mean, I love it. And I always love it when you see kind of the young investors come to you with, I don't know, whatever, we might be 22 and they've got like $100,000 of savings. I was like, man, yes, awesome. Good on you. Good on you. So I personally love seeing that.
Yeah, when you're doing like PT and then work and
bit everything. I did Uber for a bit as well.
Did you actually?
Oh, my mates were like, mate, you've literally just tried everything all at the one time. It was outrageous.
I love that. Yeah, and it's not shameful. Like if you're currently renting and maybe you are in that cohort of, 18 to 25 or something like that, and you're out of home, but it's fun, maybe going through a party season and you've had your fun, but you really want to crack down and start to save for that first deposit. I mean, we've worked with clients and mapped out like, okay, well, based on your current savings, it's probably going to take you 2 or 3 years before you get into that first property. But if you do move back in with mum and dad for a period of 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it might look like, yes, it might not be as fun. You might not have your friends around. You might not be, having parties at home.
Go to one of their house.
Exactly. And everything else. But, if you can get into a property like in half the time, then, it's not shameful. You're going to be a step on the ladder. And I tell you, by the time you get to our age at 30, all your mates will be looking at you going, how the hell did you get 3 properties? Like I'm here still paying my rent.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. Like that compounding
it's
makes a
just
huge
sacrifice,
difference.
right? Like we kind of had that mindset as well, like save a buck now to kind of earn you $3 of passive income later on. So just whatever you can do, if it's just thinking twice around, do I actually need that? Is that an essential, or is this a kind of desirable that I could potentially do without, or not necessarily do without, but coming back like to holidays, right? Do you need to go and spend 20 grand and go and do 15 countries in Europe and spend 8 weeks? Or could you do something where you're spending 5 and maybe you're going locally, maybe going interstate, maybe taking a camper van around our great country? So
maybe it's not staying in the nicest, best hotels.
Yeah,
it's
that too.
Staying in a hostel with a few mates, or, rent, like going on a holiday and having like a 1-bedroom, maybe you're to sleep in a bed with a friend, and you're still able to go on the holiday, you're still able to enjoy, you're just trying to cut those expenses and not.
Because we do see the other end of the spectrum as well, right? Where people just go like, whoa, like, hey, you're not actually living anymore. We're definitely not advocating that, but we both took some sacrifices. Still, I like to think I had okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like young adulthood, still enjoyed myself, but definitely savings was always a priority for me personally.
Yeah, and I think at the not that we're completely out of it now, but I think at the other end we do get to enjoy life a little bit more now as well, right?
Definitely,
like we
yeah,
got nicer
absolutely,
holidays, we can enjoy. We're
yeah.
more comfortable because we've got the portfolio behind us. So it is just a season. I'm a big fan of living every day the best way that you can. So don't miss out or don't sacrifice too much, but realize that it's just a point in time, and there will be a season where you can reward yourself and have a little bit more fun along the journey. I guess kind of like rolling back to when I was saving for my deposit. I'm Dutch, so like every single cent and dollar I possibly could put away in the savings account, I would. But
I'm Italian, so it was under the bed for me. Cash.
But a general good rule of thumb, depending on what your income is and what you can afford, if you can afford to put 10, 20, 30% of your income towards your savings, there's this concept called pay yourself first, right? And so the whole thing is whatever you can afford, and I would try and put that on the highest end as you possibly can. But if you're a terrible spender and you can't control whatever it might be, what I would potentially highly recommend doing is maybe getting a parent to open your own bank account, but maybe get a parent to set the password for you. So it's locked, it's secured away, you don't have access to those funds or whatever it might be. And as soon as you get that paycheck every week, every month, every fortnight, whatever it is, you have an automatic top off to come straight out of your account that it gets sent to into this separate consolidated hidden bank account, and you just let that do that thing. And the whole concept behind this is really like, if you can see $5,000 in the bank and you're going, great, awesome, I can go out and spend this $5,000. I can go out for, 3 nice dinners this week and go out and party and spend, $300 on the weekend or whatever it might be. $5,000, $300 to $5,000 seems like a drop in the ocean. But if you automatically top up even, let's say, half of that, $2,500, and then you go week 1, week 2, week 3, and you live quite lavishly, and you get to the week 4 and you've got $80 left in the account, you're not going to go party that week. But if you had the full $5,000 in there, you're probably like, oh, why not? So it's just about like managing yourself. If you're good with money, if you're not good with money, just understanding like, how do we best shift and allocate these funds so that, number one, I can still enjoy life. It's not about not going out for dinner or not partying, because we still want to do that, but do it from a relatively monitored perspective and make sure that we're putting enough away first, pay yourself first, and then get to enjoy the rest.
What are your thoughts when I say buy now, pay later?
Not a fan.
Yeah.
Not a fan. It's definitely a way to get stuck and caught up, and particularly if you're not just using one of the buy now, pay laters, but you're using all 5 of them. I don't know how many there are, but I've definitely seen some people that have got credit cards and, pay this later, and then they've gone and bought furniture on a 24 month interest free, and they have all these hidden little debts in all these different little locations, and it feels like, it's only $3,000 for a piece of furniture.
And I'll worry about it in 24 months time.
It's only, $500 for a new bikini or something that they've purchased. But, when you put it all together, it's like 10, 20 grand, and, you got to pay that back at some point in time. It's not hidden money.
Can you, kind of or can you take advantage of some of these kind of credit services? And I'm just kind of like thinking about credit cards.
Definitely. So
sorry, and just to preface it, and we're not talking about just kind of earning frequent flyer points like lots of people do.
Not quite. I mean, that's more for business owners if you've got the ability to put business expenses through the credit cards and earn big points. But and you can still do it as a normal income earner as well if that's what you want to put your heart towards. But there's definitely some benefits of some of the mechanisms that are out there. Again, it's just all about control. So I would only ever get a credit card if I know that I'm fully in control of what comes in and out of that account. And so what I mean by that is I don't carry my credit card around with me when I go for lunch. I don't carry it around with me when I go to the shops. It's a credit card that only has specific payments come out of it. It might be my electricity bill, might be my gas bill, it might be just these repayments that I know that I'm going to have to pay, and it's not a discretionary spend. It's not something that I go out and go, I'll just put on the credit card and we're good to go. And the reason you would do that is credit cards give you the ability to have a 55-day interest-free period.
Ooh, elaborate.
Yeah, so essentially you pay for something now, again, not discretionary, it's a bill that we have to pay, but instead of paying it right now or paying it back right now, we have 55 days where essentially got an interest-free period before we actually have to make the repayment and pay it off completely. And again, we don't want to do this in isolation. We want to do this in consolidation with an offset account, which we've talked about in pretty decent depth. And what we mean by this, and as we said in some previous episodes, with with an offset account, your interest gets calculated daily. So you want every single dollar that you possibly can get in that offset account to reduce your interest payable. And now we're talking interest for interest. So if I'm reducing my interest daily in my offset account, but I've got 55 days of interest free in my credit card, as long as I don't go wild and mayhem and act like a cowboy with my credit card,
And you meet that obligation.
I can essentially have another 55 days there of funds in my offset account before I have to pay them off on my credit card.
Yeah.
So it's a secret little tool if
Really,
you're
really
very
powerful.
financially savvy. Again, you don't want to be racking up $20,000, $30,000 worth of debt on the credit card.
As soon as you miss that commitment there, party's
it
spoiled.
all comes undone. And that's the thing. You miss one repayment and you start paying interest.
20% or whatever it
All of
is.
the savings that you've made on interest on your home loan might be completely undone. So you really want to be financially savvy about using these little tactics.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we're starting to delve into kind of some budgeting stuff in through here, and I suppose some people are kind of like, oh yeah, I save an extra $1,000 than what I spend on a monthly basis. I'm doing fine. But then when we're kind of talking about with respect to the larger portfolio overall, we just really want to be thinking about some of these like kind of bigger ticket, major milestone events. And if you kind of throw out a couple of them, like the first ones that come to mind are car acquisitions, for example, holiday spend, private school fees, potentially weddings. So that these kind of larger expenses that people generally don't think about. They go, I save kind of $2,000 a month. Yeah, but do you factor in that you buy that new car every, whatever it is, 4 years? Do you factor in that you actually go on a $12,000 holiday every year?
Yeah, we see this all the time. They're like, yeah, every month I check, my bank statement. I've got another $2,000, another $2,000, another $2,000. I save $2,000 a month. But they forget that they buy a new car every 5 years, or they go on a $10,000 holiday every single year. And so the beautiful thing about the platform is you can map this out over a 30-year period. And sometimes we have clients who come in and say they can save $2,000, but then every year they're not moving forward. They're just kind of flatlining. And they're like, but I'm able to save $2,000. Why aren't I moving forward? And it's because we ask you these questions about, well, how often do you buy a car? How often do you go on a holiday? How much do you spend when you go on that holiday? Do you have kids now? Are they going to start private school that you haven't thought of yet? And this is a really, really big one because private school fees can be quite expensive. And so, they might be able to save $50,000 every year for the next 3 years. And it looks nice and dandy. And they're like, yeah, but I really want to put my kids in private school. And then private school fees are $50,000 or more. And we actually, because they might have two, and then we see their savings actually come down. And they're like, bloody hell, like I thought I would be safe and financially comfortable.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's just that we want to plan for these events. Like, for example, don't not go on the holiday. Don't not send your kids to private school if that's your flavor. Don't not get the car, or maybe don't get the car, but just plan for it, right? And if for example, you're getting married next year and you need X amount for the wedding, and then there's X amount for what do you do after a wedding? Honeymoon.
It hasn't been that long, Joey. Come on.
Don't not do those things, but just plan for it. Maybe that means you're out of the market for 2 years. But like we said, live. Life's still here to be lived as well. Or maybe that means that you want to try and squeeze an acquisition in before you do said major milestone.
Correct. This is the whole point of planning for these things, right? So obviously you need a cash deposit for buying a property. And so if you do have a large expense that's coming up, or the car's getting a bit old and you really want to replace, or whatever it might be, you don't want to be doing a massive holiday, buying a new car and having a wedding in the same year where you're trying to buy a property, right? It's okay to keep your savings neutral, but we want to manage this so that it's spread across a number of years, and that in the year that we can buy a property, hopefully it's as soon as you possibly can, because the earlier you get into the market, the more growth you're going to have in your name rather than pay for it later. If we can do an acquisition this year and next year and things are going to be tight, but we can get them done, then in year 3, year 4, year 5, we can do the new car, we can do the big holiday, we can do the getting married and all those sorts of things. So it's just about looking at the future holistically and going, yes, we want to do all these things within our life, but how do we financially have the best outcome first and then enjoy the rest of the things after that?
Yeah, and I suppose like the one of the other major kind of big ticket life events is kind of family formation. And we often see people kind of think about it, and obviously depending on what stage of life you're in, you kind of go, oh, it might be like a 2-year thing. And then people have this kind of belief, and again, not a broker, but that means you're all of a sudden like shot, you're never going to be able to do anything ever again. Like, I mean, we've both got kids, like, it's not like that they cost you $1 million and then you can't ever save $1 anymore. It's actually, what I've found is that it's when a partner goes on kind of leave, it's the hit to the borrowing capacity that kind of keeps you out of the market more so than adding a dependent onto your finance application.
Do you know that a child actually costs you $1 million between the ages
Sorry,
of 0 and
okay.
18?
I meant like $1 million over the next 2 years.
So if you think about having kids, really think, kids are the best thing in the world. 100%. And that's like talking about building a family and planning for it as well is such a big impact to the borrowing capacity, right? As we've always talked about, your borrowing capacity is your finite resource. And, you do go through phases where you might not have a partner, then you have a partner, your borrowing capacity increases because you got 2 incomes. But then if that partner, again, after the wedding and the honeymoon, maybe 9 months after the honeymoon, gets pregnant and decides that they don't want to work for the next 6 or 12 months or whatever it might be and raise the child, then you're going to go through a season where you don't have that secondary income. And say you've built a portfolio around having these both incomes coming through. And let's say for whatever reason, you're going through a phase of 5 years of interest only finishing in the same year that your wife is no longer working.
I've been there, yeah.
You can't refinance. The bank will not give you the lending because you do not have the income. So again, it's pretty morbid talking about when are we having kids, when are you going to get pregnant, but at the same time, you might not know. You don't always have the answer. We don't always know when we're going to have kids, but all we're trying to say is let's think about what potentially could go wrong at any point in time and strategically
not going wrong.
Not going wrong, but like what are the things that could impact building out our portfolio and start to factor them in and plan around it before doing so.
Now we're kind of talking about like kind of portfolio cash flow management, right? And obviously we could spend like a whole episode in discussing it and around that, but it is really, really important because like what you touched on there, right? For example, if a partner's on maternity leave, serviceability is less, and that's what happened to me some years ago. Portfolio flicked over from IO to P&I. I didn't have the serviceability to actually change that. Huge impact to the overall portfolio's cash flow. And this comes back to buffers that we said before, right? Having buffers to weather you through these storms. And there was nothing I could do about it, right? Go out there and get a 15th job, go back to Uber again. But like the income was what the income was. And that's what we had to kind of wear through. And there's obviously these other kind of really, really bigger external factors that we don't have in our control that can impact our cash flow position. I'm kind of thinking about one of these big ticket events, and there has been some wild fluctuations since we started our investing journey, and that's interest rates.
100%. So in the platform, we have this graph, which is essentially plus 2% interest rates minus 2% interest rates. And so when we're assessing a portfolio and as we're accumulating debt and building up that big interest repayment, we just want to understand in the situation of what if interest rates dramatically go up by 2%? What's our repayments going to look like in that scenario? And are we going to be able to afford repayments at that type of scenario? And so, it's not kind of an end of the world type situation. These are things that have recently just happened. Like we've seen it move quite dramatically.
Well, that flux like 4-ish% maybe when I first started to then kind of 1.99% to 7% to 5.5%. Like it's been a wild spread.
These things do move. And so we just want to go, well, worst case scenario in a really bad economy, can we get through that financial situation? Whether it be, do we have enough cash flow, surplus cash flow as a buffer to get us through that period? Or do we have enough cash in the bank to, hemorrhage going through a period of like really, really negatively geared portfolio, whatever that might look like. But just being able to move in and out without these things. Now we've talked about, pay potentially going down, but one thing that a lot of people don't factor in either is pay going up. And what we mean by this is like just that annual pay increase year on year on year. And so it might not be much. It might be 3%, it might be 5%. You might move roles and double your income. Yep. It might be quite dramatic. But what a lot of people do not do is just go, okay, well, yes, we are all capped by our borrowing capacity limits. Yes, we're building a portfolio with some passive income, which might increase our borrowing capacity a little bit. But on top of that as well, over time, you do slowly have those passive pay increases through the wage, and we've got to factor them in as well. And it might mean that we have to wait another 4 or 5 years, but we might be able to do another purchase after the 4 or 5 year period as our pay increases. Both incomes are increasing over time, and we have more coming in to be able to borrow to utilize that against.
So, kind of speaking about pay increases, pay decreases, money in, money out, some of that kind of other things with respect to money management throughout holding a property portfolio, and these kind of have their seasons within a portfolio. And I don't really like to say it's always an investing strategy. I mean, it definitely could suit some individuals, but there's also these kind of negative gearing add backs which help kind of potentially cash flow management throughout a portfolio, particularly if you do have those properties that are quite negatively geared, and as long as you've got the incomes coming through to support that could benefit you potentially. And also depreciation add backs as well, which could help with the kind of the cash flow management. I know that for example, on the platform, we don't like to actually show that from a passive income perspective, because it's not like you earn negative gearing each week, and it's not like you gain depreciation each week. It's a one-off hit.
Yeah, the whole concept really is like, am I going to be able to? You have to make that passive income repayment, right? You have to make the negative repayment. So we want to make sure that we can make that repayment and we're comfortable making that repayment. And look, if we get some tax back at the end of the year, it's going to be an overall win. But we just want to make sure that we're still in surplus. We're still be able to pay everything as we are. And if we get that tax back, then happy days.
Yeah, so overall there you can see so many moving parts at play within money management with respect to not even a portfolio, right? Even before pre-portfolio stage, the saving up for a deposit, the acquisition side of thing, then the cash flow management of that particular asset. There's the life circumstance change, the big ticket milestone events that we need to factor in, the pay income, the pay increases, the pay decreases, the holding cost parameters throughout a portfolio. It's diverse, it changes all the time. So we actually do need to keep in and on top of the numbers and making sure that really, really importantly, that we have those buffers in place to kind of weather us through a storm, hopefully not another pandemic, but through a potential storm there from a cash perspective.
And there's so much on this topic, guys. We could full talk about the whole breakdown of a budget and what that looks like, breaking down all the expenses on each individual property within the portfolio and what might change, what might move, what's going to increase, what's going to decrease. We could talk about, with those cash buffers, how much of a cash buffer do you need? Do you need a month? Do you need 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? There's so many intricate details that goes in this, but in this episode, we just wanted to give a holistic approach to what money management is and all the little bits and things that we need to think of as we're building out a portfolio.
Excellent. Beach is calling us. Gotta go.
Oh, you're a cracker.